The Thera Santorini Island volcano. An olive tree solves the mystery of the largest volcanic eruption ever known to mankind. Now you'll see a image of what the island looked like 3 million years ago, before the volcano Santorini, 700,000 years ago, and then 300,000 years ago as it's growing, the caldera is lifting, 200,000 years ago, before the lower Kisari, 30,000 years ago, the volcano there rising, and 3,700 years ago after it blew and Strongili was left. This is from a geologist, Androulaki. So you see that there was tremendous changes. 700 years ago, that's just about the time that Long Valley caldera blew as well. 3,700 years ago, that's about 1,600, 700 BC. They say was about the time of the exodus of the Israeli tribe, Israelites, and with Moses from Egypt. Now, new data on the dating of the explosion, the eruption, and its consequences in Minoan Egyptian civilization, Minoan meaning the island of Crete. It was the spring, and this is proven by the seeds and pollen grains found in the volcanic ash of 1613 BC, when the largest volcanic eruption known to mankind in the last at least 10,000 years took place, which completely destroyed the island of Santorini, Thera, and the nearby islands within a radius of several kilometers. The eruption, the explosion, raised tidal waves, which swept across the coasts of nearby islands and northern Crete, thus destroyed some coastal settlements, but they cannot have caused the beginning of the decline of the Minoan civilization, according to volcanologist Dr. George Vouliouklakis, researcher of the Institute of Geological and Mineral Resources, IGME, of Greece. He's vice president of the Society Support Studies of Prehistoric Thera Santorini. Mr. Vouliouklakis, in an interview which he gave to Free Research, put before us the new scientific data, which resulted from the use of radioactive carbon C14 dating methods, tree dating, and ice dating, according to which the explosion occurred at least 100 to 150 years earlier than the conventional date of 1500 BC, which had been based on comparative studies of pottery technique and Egyptian sources. Recently, after the examination by the University of Denmark of an olive branch which had been buried in the ash of the explosion, it was finally verified that the explosion took place in 1613 BC and lasted only 2 to 24 hours. So in other words, it lasted for 2 or 3 days. Mr. Vouliouklakis, when do you detect the eruption of the Thera volcano? And he answers, essentially, the issue of dating the eruption of the Thera Santorini volcano has already been identified in 1613 BC, with a deviation of a few years before or after, which do not exceed a decade. Our certainty was sealed with a great newly discovered find, namely an olive branch with roots and leaves found in the caldera of the Thera volcano. The previous dates, which had been done on plants with a short lifespan, left us gaps, while now we can apply a series of carbon-14 dates on the same sample. But at the same time, other research was done by the American Cornell University at many sites of the Aegean, which confirmed as the date of the eruption of the volcano, again 1313 BC, with a minimal deviation, as we said. And the question, the fact that no skeletons were found either in acrotiri or shipwrecks in the sea, does it mean that the residents had foreseen the explosion and left much earlier? And he answered, the evidence we have found from the point of view of geology and volcanology tells us that the inhabitants of the island with whatever knowledge they had, did not have time to leave. It was practically impossible, even by today's standards. The picture we have is that this massive explosion developed so quickly that it was impossible to leave the island. When the warning signs started and they realized that something very bad was happening, the inhabitants had no way to escape because there were too many of them. There were over 10,000 of them. Even if all their merchant ships, of which there were many, had gathered to help them, they still would not have time to evacuate the city because of their numbers. But the fact that neither skeletons nor shipwrecks were found at Akrotiri is due to the fact that it is the only place of the land that has been found and investigated. The ancient port, however, has not yet been found, and only when we discover it and excavate the places where the inhabitants were gathered, because they would certainly have gathered at the port, trying to leave, then we will have important and valuable information about the last dramatic hours of the city, as well as about the fate of its inhabitants. We believe that in the sunken ancient port, we will find skeletons, as happened in Heraclium, which was destroyed by the eruption of Vesuvius. In the first phase of the disaster, there was very strong earthquake, and Akrotiri was definitely abandoned because the inhabitants of the island had a lot of experience with earthquakes, as can be seen from the constant reconstructions and the various levels of damage that the city suffered before the fatal final hour. And we see that it is destroyed again and again by successive earthquakes and is rebuilt even better, as shown by the interventions in the buildings after some impacts of Enceladus. The city is immediately evacuated and the rescue, Enceladus meaning the earthquake. The city is immediately evacuated and the rescue crews take action, as is done today with special, forces trying to find people. Now, they selectively intervene in the buildings, which may have trapped people and valuable goods inside. A part of Akrotiri that we are studying now has been destroyed by an early earthquake, as we can see from the interventions of the buildings. And the residents have taken with them all that was valuable and useful. They left the city. And the question, in Santorini, what kind of society did we have? And the answer, in Akrotiri of Santorini, in the excavated district of the rich, it is evident that all the residents are having a good time. Happiness is widespread. There are no sharp contrasts. If this image is representative, then it shows a healthy society. It shows an accumulation of wealth from their work, as well as a distribution of this wealth equally, so that there is no animosity. There is no theocracy, no strict authority. People are free, relaxed, have beautiful houses with toilets on the second floor, if you can believe that, yes, work happily, are rich, and enjoy their lives. Question. In the famous mural of Akrotiri, the rowers who appear have split oars to face the waves. And the answer. In prehistoric Thera, Santorini, the navy was very developed, and in addition, they had very advanced technology. This is evidenced by the shape of the ship, the position of the oarsmen, and the rudder. In other words, they built very strong ships, capable of traveling long distances safely. But about the strange shape of the paddles, we still can't prove anything. The wall painting of Akrotiri, which is ancient, because we have not found anything older, confirms the communication of Santorini with the Peloponnese, because on the opposite ships there are Messenians. This is proven by their helmets, and in general, the whole representation, which seems to be a procession related to the Peloponnese. In Santorini, the olive branch, on the basis of which all current data on the relations between the Minoans, Mycenaeans, and Egyptian civilizations are revised. On the left is the hole from where the olive branch was taken, the roots of which reach down to the dark surface. On the top right, you can see the hole with a strand, and below the 1 meter strand. Question. Are the Egyptologist theories related to the relations between the Minoan, Mycenaean, and Egyptian civilizations overturned by the new scientific data? Answer, actually, first of all, if you search Egypt for dates based on carbon-14 method, you won't find a single one. The English and the other schools of archaeology created an entire dating scale based on the ages of the pharaohs and the length of their reigns. Today, however, they find that some pharaohs are missing, while some have the same names. Therefore, the explosion date they give us was not documented like today's 1613 BC. There's a big difference which they cannot cover. So I've translated this for you from a Greek article. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.